Your voice is beautiful and wonderful as it is, and you want to open it up and celebrate it.
Hi, and welcome back to the Drama Coach podcast. This series, we're focusing a little more on teens and young adults, and those of you starting to take acting a bit more seriously and wondering what your next steps might look like. Today, I'm joined by Rosie Stancliffe, an actor and voice coach from Tyne and Wear, also known online as the Geordie Voice Coach. Rosie trained at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama with both a BA in acting and an MA in voice studies. She now works as a freelance voice coach and teacher alongside her acting work, offering one-to-one voice coaching, audition preparation, accent work, and specialist support around North East and Geordie accents. In this episode, we're talking about what voice training actually is, why it matters for young actors, how accent and identity connect to performance, and how performers can build vocal confidence without feeling they have to lose who they are. As always, this is about building confidence, understanding and realistic expectations, whether you're a young performer or perhaps a parent supporting one. So let's crack on. Rosie, it is wonderful to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be asked.
I'm excited to have you here. I first came across your work as the Geordie Voice Coach on TikTok, and I was really interested in seeing the work that you do, especially in drama school settings, actually. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of covered it, but yeah, I'm an actor. That was always what I wanted to do all my life. Yeah, we're just an actor for a long time. Also bar staff, waitress, receptionist, all the other stuff in between. And then during the pandemic, I kind of used that time to really sit and reflect about, I was sort of approaching middle age and thinking, what else can I do alongside acting? Because unfortunately, acting doesn't keep you afloat. And especially in the North East, there's not as many parts around, way too many talented actors for the amount of parts that there are. So we often it's a bit of a carousel, share them around. And so, yeah, I was kind of looking towards my future and thinking what else I could be doing. And it was my sister that actually suggested, would I maybe go back and do some studying? And yeah, there's a voice studies masters at Central, which is where I trained as an actor. And voice was always my favourite lesson at drama school. I always tell my students, that's where I learnt to act, in my voice lessons, actually. I had a really inspirational voice teacher called Claudette Williams, who is still there, and she now heads up the BA acting. And yeah, she taught me how to act, I think, actually, rather than, I'm sure I learned lots of acting lessons, but for me, all the big realizations dropped during my voice classes in terms of voice and text work, bringing the language to life, started to feel my emotions through sound and through the vowels, especially when we got into classical text and Shakespeare, and then connecting to breath and emotions, and releasing tension and starting to slowly undo all the defense mechanisms I've built up over the years, all the tension everywhere in the jaw and the shoulders that was kind of keeping me away from feeling things. And so all of that happened in my voice class. So learning to connect to breath and emotion, learning to release tension, and really just start to listen and respond in a more embodied way, which is something I, as an actor, had always struggled with. I turned up to drama school kind of thinking there was such thing as a character actor, which I don't think there is now. But that's, that was the old kind of terminology. And so I was, thinking about putting on characters and putting on silly voices and different physicalities and all that kind of stuff, being a bit of a clown. And actually it was in my voice classes that all of that started to peel away, and I found some sort of truthful connection. So I have a very, very deep and profound connection to voice work for actors. So I thought I'd go and do that master's during the during the year of COVID, 2020 to 21. And then since then, that's it. Then my acting career kind of picked up straight after that. Of course it did. And then since 2021, it's just been a juggle between them both. And sometimes there's more acting work, and then sometimes it goes really quiet again. And then I'm just in the teacher mode. And it's teaching in drama schools that really is the thing that I love the most. All of my friends, we've kind of graduated and found different routes within the voice world. So a lot of people go into like the corporate world, which I just don't feel I'm suited for. And maybe we'll get onto that a little bit about like maybe even to do with accent bias and things. But yeah, I really have figured out now, with all the different avenues that you can go down, that being in a room with a bunch of like new generation actors, it just like makes my heart sing. So that's where it's my happy place.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. I was saying that to my adult actors actually this week. I was like, yes, I do. I feel so I tried to escape teaching and I got sucked back in, but in a different way. And that makes my heart sing. I think that's really lovely. And I think that's a lot of what this podcast is about, is we can't necessarily teach via a podcast, but we can point people in the right direction and give advice. And I think we're always learning as actors, anyone who wants to act.
Yeah. You never ever stop. And I am definitely, my acting game has moved up since I spent another year focusing on voice, focusing on breath. And breath is the thing that I find the hardest, actually. I've stepped up another level, and that's in my 40s, like you never ever stop learning. And now as what's great is when you're a teacher, like you're learning off the students all the time as well, and you're learning by teaching. And so I'm also like teaching myself more about acting in a room with other new actors. So yeah, it's also funny to say the rest of my family are my mum and dad and my sister all went into education. And I was the only one that didn't. And then I've actually found myself
now here you are
as a teacher, just like everyone. It's a family trade, it turns out.
Oh, I think that's really lovely.
Yeah.
You mentioned breath quite a lot there. And I also agree that breath is so important. And I think people don't always associate it with voice, do they? They're thinking about being louder and projecting or putting on accents or whatever. But that to me is sounding like you're coming from such a realistic point of view. Tell me more about breath, because I am so interested, and I think the listeners will be too.
It kind of scares us talking about it, even, because I do feel like it's the thing that I am worst at in terms of as an actor, but then it's a real gift of a challenge then as a teacher, to kind of have to confront the thing that you yourself find the hardest. And it's if you can marry emotions with your breath, because as human beings we feel our emotions through different breaths. When we're shocked, it's that intake of breath. When we're angry, it's that real harsh outtake. If we're elated, that big breath comes in. So actually, as human beings, we do feel our emotions and express our emotions through the in-breath and the out-breath. And I think where I am with my teaching is now trying to get actors to just kind of it's in the listening moments a lot of the time. So it's not necessarily in the speaking moments, although speaking on a full out breath is much better for your voice. It means that your voice is supported, rather than some people have a habit of kind of exhaling and then and then speaking, and then actually you don't have a lot of air pressure coming up below the larynx, and that's when you might start to actually strain the muscles there. So actually allowing the breath in and then marrying the voice with the out breath, that is a good kind of safe vocal usage, and means that your voice is really supported. You've got enough breath to last you through a sentence. But yeah, a lot of the kind of breath and emotion stuff really is about, for me, is in the listening moments as the actor. So when you're not doing the speaking, and if you, it goes along with tension as well. So breath and tension are kind of together. And I always tell actors, like in our lessons when I'm doing kind of an introduction to voice and we're going through what we call the vocal progression and looking at all the different parts of voice. I always say like tension is the enemy of the actor, really. And tension and breath are linked in that if you are tense, the breath is not able to freely come through your body. You'll feel it just in the chest. You'll just have quite like a shallow breath. Whereas if you can release tension in the shoulders and actually in the abdominal muscles, let that breath kind of sink a bit lower and let the ribs expand, then so if you can just stand and listen and kind of allow yourself to be free of tension and just let the breath just flow in and out, you will start to feel. And you can like, I do like a kind of breath meditation thing from, she's called Jessica Wolf. I think that's
well, we can tag it in the show notes.
Yeah,
we can double check that. That'll be good.
It was just a little thing in a voice book that was a meditation on lying on the beach and thinking about the waves as the breath. And it's a way of taking tension away from breath, because also when you're first starting, breath is something we do all the time. We never even think about it. And then just like that thing, if like when you have to like think about how to walk and suddenly you don't know which way your hands and feet go. The same thing happens with breath. When you start getting people to think about their breath, they suddenly like can't breathe anymore.
Yeah. Once you spotlight it, it becomes awkward, and you need to get over that. Yeah,
and then the tension creeps in, and then you're like can't figure out the in breath and the out breath, and it becomes hard. So if you can kind of take it away from actually the mechanics of it and think about it as like the waves flowing in and out on the beach, and then you can think about the waves being bigger or smaller, and then the breath pattern will change, and you'll naturally have a nice big intake of breath and back out, and then maybe a few shallower ones. And then what I do then, which I've then added to this exercise, is then I get them to, if they're working on a play, if they've got a character that they're working on, is to pick some points within the scene of different emotions, and then the waves then become that emotion. And so they've gone from kind of lying on a nice pleasant beach to then the waves washing over them with whatever emotion it is. And then that's a kind of like nice, easy, tension-free way of like starting to feel the emotion wash up and down you. And it's always like it's an amazing exercise, because then you feel a physiological change. Your goosebumps start, and your entire body just starts to feel a new emotion just by thinking about it and letting it come in and out. And so, I was just talking to some actors this week about how we can also use breath to help us sort of almost trick our body into the emotional state that we need. So your brain just might not be on it, but unfortunately, if you're working as a professional, there's people paying to see the show regardless of,
how you're
feeling. So sometimes, you can't be in it every time. Or if you're on set and you've done the scene, like same take a million times, and like the first one you might be so there, but then you've got what I always tell my students is like, this is the difference between going from like doing it as a hobby to doing it as a job, is you have to then learn about technique, and the technique to replicate again and again and again, regardless of how much you're in it. But it doesn't necessarily then lead to just faking it and like showing emotion. And I always feel like showing emotion comes with like attention and a like, look at me, I'm angry, or look at me, like, oh, I'm sad. But if you can just try and breathe through it and breathe those emotions in, or change your breath pattern, so suddenly make it a bit more shallow, or like we were doing this week, bouncing the diaphragm and like that kind of panting, and that can then kind of move you into a place of kind of panic or sadness or whatever. So you can use breath to kind of almost trick your body into getting there, or the opposite, you can like just allow the emotions to wash through you.
I love tapping into Stanislavski, and he does the same, doesn't he? He does all that inside out, and then towards the end of his work goes, actually, it works outside in as well. But I like that because it's what works for the student and for them, for that project at that time. What works for you one time might not another. So I think the more tools we can have, the better. And I could feel that coming from you when you were doing the shallow breath. I can see you as well, but I could feel that resonating from the screen and the sound of that sort of the nerves. As soon as you get the breath right, that's wonderful. That's such a great tool to have, and that's before you even do anything vocal. That's before any real sound comes out. That's brilliant.
And students at the start of their journey, especially when I teach in like a part-time drama school, which is a lot more like, it's kind of, they want instant results, and some of them might already actually be out there working and things. They are so concerned with not wanting to like it to be fake, and like it doesn't have to be like, doing that doesn't mean that you're faking it or lying.
It's a way in.
You're using exactly that. It's a technique to like snap yourself into a new emotional state. It doesn't, and the audience actually won't know any different.
Of course not.
Whether you're thinking about the argument you just had at home before you got to the theatre or not, like, all they'll hear and see is someone who seems in distress.
And you mentioned, sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
And you mentioned screen acting as well for, take after take after take. In a theatre piece, you're following an arc, whereas on set, and people listening to this might know, there's quite a few going into screen acting. You're probably filming out of sequence. You might film this many times, then break for lunch and then do it again.
Yeah.
You need a quick way in. It can't be following a real story arc. You need a way in to feel truthful, don't you? And I think breath is amazing for that.
Yeah, and I mean, screen work really, from an acting point of view, it really scares me in that regard, because theatre is the thing that I know and understand and love the most. I'm a proper theatre geek, and like that's so. I've done some screen work as an actor, but not a lot, and the thought of being put into, I have so much admiration when I watch TV shows that are such heightened emotions in actually what's a very unrealistic setting. There's a whole crew behind the camera, and you might have done that take loads of time. Like it's such an amazing technical feat, really, to be able to get yourself to those type of emotional states out of sequence. Whereas, as you say, when you do a play, you take yourself on the journey. So by the time you get to that scene, all of the rest of the stuff's happened.
This episode is supported by Scene Tribe, a new industry network for creatives built around your credits, your collaborations, and the work that you've actually done. If you're ready to be found by the right people, head to scenetribe.com. Right, back to the episode.
Can I move you on, Rosie, too?
Yeah.
I kind of want to mix two things together that I wanted to talk about, and that's voice and confidence, because I think it's huge. I think voice is huge in confidence. But also accent, identity, regional voice, because I did spot a TikTok from you just yesterday, which really intrigued me. So I wonder if we'll dip in a bit there. It's not as, well, it is appropriate to actors. Of course it is, because you've all got your own natural voice. So first of all, voice and confidence. I'll ask you a really basic question. Does vocal training help in the confidence of actors?
Yes. There we go. That was easy.
How and why, and how does it work? What kind of training do they need to feel confident in their voice?
Well, there's the just allowing sound to like resonate in your body, and understanding about filling a performance space that brings a level of confidence to your work. One of my daily battles with students is, I wonder if this is a sign of the times for the various reasons that have made up young people's lives now, but actually pushing sound through your words. But that can bring a whole load of confidence. If you can really lean into resonance and go back to emotions again, stop pushing your emotions through sound rather than devoicing all those emotions to there, but actually push your emotions through the vowels. That brings a hell of a lot more confidence to your performance. It means you can really like sit in it and feel with your whole body. So resonance is a big thing. And articulation as well.
And if somebody doesn't know, if they've not heard, because I will chat about resonance lots, but if somebody hasn't heard the word resonance before, how would you explain that?
It is the vibrations of the voice through your body and out into space. So literally the sound waves that are made at in the vocal folds, bouncing around all the cavities in the throat, what we would call the pharynx, so the throat passage going up behind the mouth and up behind the nose, and in the oral cavity, which we would say is like inside the mouth, and also in the nasal cavity in the nose. So all of that area is called the vocal tract. So in a technical term, resonance is the vocal folds coming together and creating sound waves. Those sound waves bounce around the spaces and then out into the world. And now in doing that, they create secondary resonance, which is the bones in your body, in your chest, your teeth, the bones in your face mask, and even up in your skull. They all start to vibrate because those sound waves are bouncing around. So we get actual like resonance in our bodies. So the first thing you always do with resonance is you want to hum first, so that you're not pushing lots of sound out. You're creating a nice soft place for the vocal folds to warm up, and you're getting the body to buzz first. So first you want to get your instrument like buzzing, and then you open them out into different vowels and they burst out into space, and that creates what we call like natural amplification. So once you've warmed up your resonance, your resonators, and using pitch to send it to different areas around the vocal tract and then out into space, when you go to speak, you're just like naturally louder and you no longer need to push. So that's what resonance is. So it's all the vowel sounds and the vibrations.
And I would imagine people could play at home safely, couldn't they? Like you said, starting with that hum and move that sound around. Where can it go? As long as you're never pushing, I would imagine that's something that you could play to get to know your different resonance.
Definitely. And we can, like, when we're first teaching resonance, I'll actually tell people to like send the hums to different places. We talk about the chest, and actually the sound doesn't go down into the chest because it's actually in the throat where the larynx is, but we can feel the vibrations in the chest. So that lower register that we have, we call chest voice. So we would first start with a like nice low pitched hum and try and get the bones in the chest to vibrate. Then you could just try and send the vibrations just into the throat area. I'm not using like technical terminology here. I'll just say
that's
throat.
Great. Yeah, no, that's perfect.
And then try and just send the sound into the back of the mouth, and then send it into the middle of the mouth, then send it into the lips, and then get the lips buzzing. Then you can send it up into like the cheeks and the face mask, and then into the nose. And then what we say, the top register is head voice. Again, the sound isn't actually up in your brain, but it feels like that. And while you're working your way through, you change you rise the pitch. So by the time you get to a nice high pitched hum, those frequencies, the sound waves are very small by that point when we get to a high pitch. So they bounce around up in the top behind the nose and sort of feel like they're resonating in your head. So you can do that yourself. You just send the hums all around and you can actually feel the vibrations moving. And then what you can do is like you can flip between chest and head and you'll feel the vibrations disappear. So you just like put your hands on your chest, do a low hum, and then you flip it up to the head, and you'll actually feel the vibrations leave and come back again. So anybody can have a go at that. And then you can open them out into this maybe 3, as a simple one you can do. You can pick the 3 vowels in 3 kind of main areas. So the chest, you open out into an R in a nice low pitch. And then oral resonance pings out really nicely on the vowel A, because it's quite a pingy sound. And we bring the pitch up a bit more, and you feel it like pinging out of your mouth and out of your cheekbones. And then the vowel that we use for head resonance is E, a nice E. Again, that's a nice closed vowel, and we put the pitch up and we can feel it buzzing around in the top. So you can go from R to A to E, and then go and speak after that, and you'll feel your body like buzzing.
Love that. Thank you. We've got exercises that people can be doing right now. Pause the podcast, go and have an exercise.
Yeah, have a go.
Yeah, fabulous. I'm going to have a bit more of a go later, because this sort of taps me back into training. We said, didn't we? Learning is so important, and you can sort of forget what you've learned, and it is nice to come back to it and revisit it, because we change, don't we, and our emotions and our characters change. So this is all really, really good. Selfishly for me as well.
And then just like the other thing about the confidence, so it just says about the articulation. Actors always feel way more confident in what they're saying once they've warmed up their articulators. So your main ones you want to do is the jaw, the lips, the tongue, and then the soft palate at the back, which people often forget about, which is that arch of muscle in the back of the mouth that has the little uvula dangling down in the middle of it. That is a muscle, and that creates K's and G's and the that NG sound. So not forgetting that. So if you have a little rub around on the jaw, a few little lip trills, and maybe move the muscles around on the lips, do some different tongue exercises, tongue circles behind the lips, or like stick the easy one that always helps with articulation. Stick your tongue out of your mouth and then speak. And I always do that days of the week. And then when you pop your tongue back, if you do that a couple of times, or do it on I don't know, Mary Had a Little Lamb or something. When you bring it back in, you feel so much clearer. And then soft palate, do a few yawns, and then you can do some like up and down your range. So doing some G's and K's and things, and that really helps with confidence, because suddenly actors feel much more in control of the words that they're saying. That's like absolutely real life anecdotal evidence I have from all my teaching and my own postgraduate research was articulation creates loads more confidence in getting the words right. So once your muscles have been warmed up and are like feeling flexible and muscular, you feel way more confident in what you're saying.
They're ready to give and receive the sounds, I suppose. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. For me, something I notice in me and in students, because I thought it was an adult thing, is tension in my jaw. I notice that a lot. Have you got a top tip that might help adults, teens to relieve that? Because I think that's not so helpful for vocal work.
So do you know what? Because of the type of work I do, I'm very much like a generalist, but there are people that are like specialists in the jaw. It's a really, it's a big deal in the voice world, jaws. And I'm afraid I'm much more, I'm not an expert on the jaw whatsoever, okay, other than knowing I've always had my own jaw tension. But we've got kind of the two main muscles around the jaw. Is the masseter muscle, which keeps the top jaw and the bottom jaw together. So it runs kind of from on the side of the cheeks, from the cheekbone down. You sort of put your fingers on the side of your cheeks and feel it. If you clench your teeth, you feel the muscle pop out. So that is like one of the strong. I had to look this up to get the facts right, because I heard that it was the strongest muscle in the body. Now, apparently, there's a caveat to that. By weight, by size category.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's the strongest muscle.
Are the strongest thing, aren't they? But I'm stronger than ants for their size. That makes absolute sense. Yeah. So no wonder we get tense there then, if it's that strong. Definitely.
So that one it's our chewing muscle, and it's also where we hold loads of our emotional tension. You know, if you want to feel angry or whatever, to those muscles. So we carry around lots of habitual tension there. So just using nice soft fingers to just massage loosely in that area, and try not to like do too much digging in, because back in the day, 20 odd years ago when I was at drama school, we were like really kind of pummeling
I've seen that. Yeah.
the muscle. But actually, one voice teacher that I was shadowing when I was doing my teacher training, she was saying that like the jaw muscles really love attention. And so actually, the more, just like if you'd had like a very deep sports massage, your muscles are going to be throbbing afterwards, and then they'll calm down. But like initially, after that really deep massage, those muscles are going to be,
ache. And
that's the same with the jaw. So actually, maybe you give yourself a kind of deep muscle, like deep tissue massage every so
help.
often. Maybe you do that regularly, but like in terms of like kind of warming up ready to perform or whatever, I think kind of more, softness and care is the key. And then the other muscle, which we don't know about, is the temporalis muscle, which starts at the temple and fans up into the skull. And that is a really lovely massage. And you can do that by rubbing in circles on the temple, or actually starting with your fingers at the corners of your eye where your temple is, and then just pushing them up and into the hairline in a diagonal fashion. And that feels amazing. But that pulls the jaw up like
so
diagonally.
So we wouldn't think of that as
I know I've got my headphones on, so I can't, but you kind of like just push your fingers up, but that is a jaw muscle.
I didn't know that. I've heard people say like tension headaches, and I've seen people sort of rub their temples maybe, but I didn't realize that is associated with your jaw.
So giving that a nice little rub as well will also release tension. And then there's the classic one of kind of putting the bottom of your palm underneath your cheekbones and then just lightly drawing them down the face. But I would say it's all about like softness and kind of your brain talking to the muscles and asking them to release. Like you can even just do a nice like rubbing your hands together to create some heat, and then just cupping them on your face, and then just talking to your muscle in your head, because I had a student,
they do it out loud.
Say it out loud, and they were like, please release.
That's okay if that's how you work, but maybe harder in a group setting.
But also I guess if you're talking, then the muscles are working. So
I guess so.
Just quietly to yourself, putting your like lovely hot hands on the side of your face and just like literally asking your muscles to just soften into the heat of your hands, and that really loosens the jaw actually. So there's some ones. There's other ones, Brilliant. But I wouldn't want to do it over for safety reasons.
You've described it so well as well. So the video is on, I think, Spotify and YouTube, but for all the others, it's audio. But you've described it so well.
Good.
I feel like people could listen and get the gist of that. And if they're unsure, then hop onto YouTube or Spotify and they'll be able to see you doing that. Thank you. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Like I say, I feel selfishly like I'm learning and relearning from this. So I hope the listeners are getting loads from this. Let's talk accents. Identity, regional voice. I love listening to your accent. I love accents, full stop. I love playing with them. I love hearing them. And with the push for authenticity nowadays, we are hearing, I think, so many more regional voices on television and theatres, but I know you've done a lot more research into this, so I'd love to hear about it. And in relation to confidence as well, because I want young people to feel they can own their voice.
Well, that is literally what my research is about. My postgraduate research is exactly on that, finding confidence in your own accent. I could do an entire podcast just about that, because I literally won't ever shut up about it. So it was my dissertation research for my master's, and I've now finally, it's taken me years to do it, written it up into an academic article for a journal, which is now in the peer review process, which is very scary, because now actual experts are going to read it and pick it apart and maybe have something to say. So we'll see. But so it's in the pipeline to actually be published as an actual piece of academic research that people can cite and use. So I'm very, very excited about it. But it's now it actually stemmed from a bit of a grudge that I had at drama school when I was training as an actor, which was in one of our third year shows, I decided to use my own accent. Now, I spent most of my drama school. Nobody told me to do this, by the way. So at Central, I can't remember. I mean, it was like 20 years ago now when I went. I can't remember having any sort of overt stereotypical things said about my accent. I mean, there may well have been, but I can't remember off the top of my mind. But in our third year show, I decided to use my own accent because I spent most of my drama training trying to do other accents and getting really good at like an RP and all that kind of stuff. I thought accents were going to be a huge part of my career. It turns out I've literally done nearly every single acting job I've done it in my own accent.
But there are in terms of understanding and training and where they all sit and, you know, your whole career alongside your acting is voice. So I don't feel like you were exploring, right? And I love accents, but I'm probably never going to use them because they'd employ someone with that actual accent.
Well, that turns out that's what they do in the industry, really, unless you've got an RP accent and then they see you as can doing anything, unfortunately.
Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's interesting. I think if you're a name and have an RP, then you will. But if you're not famous or not, you know, really well known in the industry, why would they hire you doing an accent over someone with the actual accent? I don't know.
Yeah, well, these days it is about profile. So maybe it's more to do with profile, and maybe more people with more profile. I don't know. Maybe.
I've done a lot though, because people keep asking me, and it's, you know, like a student film or an independent film. Oh, can you do this accent? I was like, I've had a bit of training, give it a go. And I love doing it. But then I'm terrified that I think somebody said, oh, well, my family is Irish. I was like, oh gosh, I hope this is okay. And they're like, yeah, it's okay. So there is that sort of, we're all playing as actors, but I think the voice, when you're playing with a new voice, there's something really exposing and a little bit scary about that, but fun too.
And like the more I've learned about accents now, I mean, I never want to touch another accent in my life. Like, I wish I didn't know. I'm too far into it now. I'm like, I wish I had just the level that I used to know. I kind of like, you know, when you know too much.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'll never be able to get this exactly right. So I kind of like, I've kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit now, like knowing too much about accents. But now as an actor, I'm too scared to try an accent ever again. Whereas before, I would just absolutely throw myself into it. So where were we? So
accent and identity.
Oh, yes. So I decided to use my own accent for one of my parts in the third year show, and at the end of it we always had like a one-to-one feedback session with the director, and she said to me, I have marked you down to a 2-1 because I couldn't always understand what you were saying,
but not diction, not any of that, but because of accent.
And again, this is so long ago, right? So you know, memories change.
Yes.
So I can't. I'm not going to name the person.
No.
And I can't. You know,
and sometimes
maybe
it's the way to take it. But
what I took from that,
for you.
because the thing is, at drama school, you're rehearsing it for at least 4 weeks every day, and so what annoyed me was that it hadn't been brought up before then. It was only brought up after the fact. And B, you know, my accent, even when I'm talking to you now, this isn't as broad a Geordie accent as I might usually have. Like, I kind of just sort of switch it without even meaning to. And also, I don't have a hugely strong Geordie accent compared to some of my friends. And then moving south, I'd been living in London for 3 years, and my accent had definitely softened. I mean, everyone at home would tell you that whenever you went home for the holidays. And actually, ironically, out of not being understood when I first moved to London, I had to repeat myself all the time. And so, you know, you start to just adjust your accent so that you just don't have to go through the rigmarole of having to repeat everything you say. So I now, as a fully grown adult with opinions and views, and I would have handled that very differently. But I don't accept that that you wouldn't have been able to understand me, actually. After 3 years of drama training, of living in the South, of, expert voice tuition, So that kind of is the catalyst for my my research. It's just a huge grudge.
But it's coming from a place of care, and you don't want that happening to others. That's where all the kind of teaching and learning comes from, doesn't it? If we can learn from our experiences and make something better, then I think that's great. But it sounds like there might still be a way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was really interested in the authenticity of accents and what happened. Like, do we need to dilute them or water them down or change them to work on clarity? And I made it very specific to the stage, just because that's what I know. And, in a kind of student dissertation, you kind of have to narrow things down. So I did it as in, what would happen with me, with my positionality as someone with a Geordie accent that historically would have been changed or actually excluded from theatre. If we go back in time, it was only in anecdotally, the kind of 70s and 80s when they actually allowed people to speak in their own accents at drama school. Before that, Ian McKellen always talks about that. They had to learn RP. So anyone with regional accents had to speak in RP. So it's, in not that long ago, a Geordie accent would definitely not be teaching people or coaching people how to speak, for sure. And so I was like, so when I get into this industry and I'm working with people who are using their native accents, so they're not putting on an accent, but they are in a play as a Geordie or as a Scouser or whatever, how can I as a coach work with them on clarity? If the director, for instance, says that we can't understand them, how can I do that whilst maintaining the authenticity of the accent? So then I went on an action research journey. So I talked to writers and directors of plays that I'd seen and liked that had characters whose their whole point is the authenticity of their accents is a major part of the storyline. And then I also interviewed some voice coaches as well to ask how they work on clarity and what their experience in the past when they were training, and then them as teachers, how were they taught? Were they taught by someone with an RP accent? Were they and then how did they work on clarity, so that I could learn from the experts, but also hear from the people who write and direct these pieces where authenticity is core to the storytelling. And I found out loads of interesting things in those interviews themselves, before even getting into the room. But then I took all of that knowledge, and I guess the key takeaways from the interviews was that the writers were more malleable than I thought they'd be, actually. The story is key. The story is why we're all there. The story is the most important thing. So they were actually more malleable in terms of adapting as long as to aid the storytelling. Directors, the directors I interviewed weren't bothered whether the audience heard every word.
Okay.
They were like, again, the story's the most important bit, and actually authenticity trumps clarity for them.
And it's not an exam, is it? It's a performance, it's a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. It's not an examination of how clear you are.
So they were more like, it's more important for us that people come and see a true representation of these people and not a fake one that's been sort of modified or diluted for a certain type of audience. And we're not bothered if they don't hear every single word, as long as the storytelling is there. And what was important was, for the writers, is that if the audience come who are reflected in the characters on stage, they want to see themselves reflected truthfully. And that means maybe, that some of the audience might not understand the characters all the time. And that's fine. That's life. But if we want to create more diversity on our stages and screens, then, the audience might have to do a bit of a harder job of actually listening. Now, the voice coaches, were much more about they thought every word needed to be heard more, which is, understandable, I guess. Yeah. So that they were kind of the takeaways from the interviews. But then I worked with two actors, one with a Geordie accent and one with a Hull accent, in the theatre at Central, and I took all the things I'd got from my interviews with the voice coaches about different ways of working on clarity. We workshopped stuff, and we did warm-ups that were tailored to making sure they were being mindful of their own consonant sounds and not trying to replicate maybe a more RP placement of consonant sounds, which happens all the time, unconsciously as well. I'm not saying this is always a conscious thing. It's just, and I also did a big literature review of all the voice books, UK, British voice books. And, RP is laced into nearly every single one.
Yeah, now you say it, you're so right. I'm thinking about my stack of books over there.
Yeah.
And I did exactly the same. I've spoken about this on the podcast before. I listened to my voice back as a child in the, 80s, 90s, and heard my West Country accent and thought, well, you'll never be on the radio, will you? And bit by bit taught myself RP. This now is my natural accent, which is fairly RP, but it wasn't my native accent. And the West Country, I think I offended my family a little bit from time to time, saying I don't like it.
Yes,
I don't like it. It's not how actors speak, and I want to be an actor. Yeah. So I did, but again, I do have this real love of accents, and I can slip into my West Country if I want to. Of course I can. And this isn't fake. This is but it was at a time as a young girl, sort of taught it to myself because I thought that's what was needed. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think my gripe with all the books is that it's fine for voice academics to be using these texts with a level of understanding of the current industry, the all the academic writing that's going on, that is there. However, the layperson who is maybe a generalist, like drama teacher, at school or at a youth theatre or at college, because a lot of time college courses don't have specific voice classes,
No.
So, you might be an acting teacher or something, and so you're picking up these books, like Cicely Berry's one, for instance.
I've got that, yeah.
So that was reprinted while she was still alive, in the 2000s, and the words weren't changed. And there's some really disparaging things in there. There's sentences in there about accents, about being a little bit too this or a little bit too that or whatever. And a lot of the books really contradict themselves. So the writers will say everyone should speak in their own accents. However, maybe should you look at, this consonant or that consonant or whatever it might be. And so there's a lot of conflicting, very subliminal messaging in there, which your average person would not even pick up on.
I'm going to go and have another look now, because I got it because I was recommended it by someone a Lambda teacher a long time ago, and I just sort of dipped here and there, but I'm going to go and look out for
it's great. I mean, Cicely Berry absolutely deserves her place in history for sure. She's got a huge legacy, and she's a really, really important practitioner in the world of voice. However, that book was written in another generation, and there are many more books more recently, and I would always go to Barbara Houseman. So that's always my first call. And David Carey and Rebecca Clark Carey, they've written books together, and David worked under Cicely Berry at the RSC, so his work is hugely influenced by her, but it's really, really accessible books that anyone can pick up. And he actually used to run the Voice Studies Masters at Central and made the course what it was. So their books are great, and Barbara Houseman is an absolute legend who has who's very much alive and kicking and does a lot of work on breath and things, but her books are very accessible. And so they would be always my go-tos, whereas you can't deny the impression that Cicely Berry has had on all of us. It's it's a legacy that should be celebrated for sure. But I would, when you're picking up books, look and see when they were written, because the UK, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but the UK has an entrenched hierarchy of accents within it, going into the class system. There's that entrenched understanding of the hierarchy of accents can actually be found in some of those older pieces of writing, I would say.
And I thought it was so interesting when you were pointing out on what I watched last night about how the graph of how age understands different accents. But I felt awful. I was like, well, I'm an older RP speaker and I don't think like this about these accents. I was like, oh, I love them all. But I think you're right. There's an older generation that expects an RP or perhaps a more southern accent. I think you're right, because I've seen that. But I was feeling dreadful because I was like, oh, I'm kind of in this demographic, but this isn't my opinion at all.
Yeah.
But it interests me how, I'm probably doing it a disservice, but how a particular accent could be really cool for the youngsters and seen as higher status, and then in the older generation it was seen as a low status accent. I couldn't believe that. I thought that was really, really interesting. I don't know how that relates exactly to the audience, but again, I think it's learning and understanding, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think what was interesting about this, so this was research done by Accent Bias Britain, who did an extensive survey and focused on 5 different accents, but what they couldn't say about, they noticed a difference between younger people and older people in terms of their perceptions of accents, but what they couldn't say was, is this because nowadays in the 2020s people are less prejudiced about accents, or is it that young people are always less prejudiced and become more prejudiced when they're older? So that's what they couldn't decipher from the results about how young people seemed to have much less prejudice when it comes to certain accents, and older people had a lot more. But we don't know whether that's is it a previous generation versus a new world, or is it that, just like we see in, there's political graphs that would show you the exact same things, that people kind of become more right-leaning as they get older. So
I hope it's the first. I hope we're all just getting, appreciating authenticity. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that comes from literally representation. Like, the more representation we have, it's that classic line of if you can't see it, you can't be it. And the more we show people that you can be anything in whatever you look like, whatever you sound like, then that's how you break stereotypes. So one would hope it is surely that people are becoming less prejudiced, because one of my other ideas for my dissertation research was on stereotypical accent casting in film and TV and the stage, and how it's that chicken and egg thing of do we whose job is it to change accent diversity on our screens? Can we have a Geordie judge, or is the judge always going to be with an RP accent? And
usually, isn't it? Still,
but that also does reflect society, because in the legal profession, accent bias is something that people fight against, especially in going into being a barrister, and so the journey to become, say, a High Court judge is fraught with lots of different prejudices along the way, in terms of gender, in terms of race, and in terms of class, in terms of accents. I'm sure disability as well. So all of those things are true. But if we never show a Geordie judge or whatever, then how are we ever going to do that? And there's been a huge push in terms of representation, in terms of ethnicity that we see on TV now. But accents are not there yet. I think they still live in the land of stereotypes.
Yeah. I think you might be right, and I feel like I'm going to spot it even more now after this, or spot the lack of it after this conversation.
Yeah.
Rosie, can I talk to you a little bit about verbatim theatre? Because I noticed you did some verbatim voice workshops, and some listeners may not have heard this term before. So tell us a little bit about it, please.
Yeah, I've done a lot of verbatim theatre, but it was really in vogue. It was very, very trendy a few years ago, and now I don't see it anymore. It's something that kind of comes in and out of fashion. But verbatim theatre is theatre that's been created using the real life words of real life people, normally from interviews. So a theatre maker would have a topic that they wanted to discuss. Most recently, there was a very perfect example of a brilliant verbatim theatre that was doing its job very well, which was at the National Theatre, which was to do with the Grenfell tragedy.
Yes, I did hear
and
about this.
That was literally a perfect example of verbatim theatre. And so it's normally around an issue. It doesn't necessarily have to be a very, hard issue. There's been some that are kind of fun. There was one about old people going on cruises.
That does sound fun.
Yeah. So it's not all doom and gloom. However, it's normally a sort of documentary style theatre to raise awareness on an issue, usually. And it's a way of getting real people's words out to the public without having to put them on a stage, So someone interviews a lot of people so I've done ones on homelessness, I've done ones on domestic violence, so these are all quite serious ones. Done about the care system, and what else? Anyway, it'll be on a subject, people get interviewed on it, and then actors recreate their words on stage. And there's various ways you can do that. So you might just get given what we call the transcript, which is the script. And then you create your own version of that character using the words to help you. So the speech patterns of the people are written into the transcript, so they're not edited into nice, standard English.
So you've got all your ums and ahs and whatever.
Yeah. All the dots and the dashes and the changing direction, all that kind of stuff. So you use that and you get it in your mouth and you speak it. And sort of the character kind of comes out of it because the speech pattern is written into the text. So the kind of character just pops out of you regardless. So it's really fun. You might do it where you get given the recordings. So I've done that where I've had to then learn, try and mimic the voice. I've come up with a new term called vocal matching, rather than mimicry, because mimic feels somehow disrespectful.
Yes, I like that.
Or an impression, So actually now with my students, because I now teach this, at Mount View, they have a module called Verbatim and Impressions. And so we teach them verbatim skills to then be able to take a minute from a performance of someone on a film, and they have to replicate it again and again. So talk about vocally matching them. So you might get recordings that you have to try and vocally match. So then again, you play around with your resonance. You try and find where that person resonates from, and copying their facial expressions, or if you've got video. But if you just got so you try to match them.
That's huge what you've just said there about copy their facial expressions. I've noticed that with playing with accent, if you can create the facial and I interviewed a Kate, who's a voice artist, and when I was watching her do some of her voices, it was so interesting how the face changed so much. So I think if you can watch as well, that's a real gift, isn't it? To copy the face movement.
It's a big thing in accent training now. It's called oral posture. So it's literally the architecture of the jaw and the lips and the tongue and the soft palate. So what is the posture of the face doing? And then it'll change the sound that comes out completely, because you're just changing the shape of where those sound waves are bouncing out. So you literally can snap into a new accent and a new character by playing around with the oral posture. So you might do that. But then there's another form of verbatim called recorded delivery, which was pioneered by Alecki Blythe. And I did a play with this, and I worked on it all the way right from the R&D, so the research and development, all the way through to the full production. And then we took it on tour a year after. So all in all, I was working on it for a good 3 years or so, on and off. And then we started taking it to some conferences, because it was about the care system and young people leaving the care system. And so that was by Paddy Campbell and Amy Goldin and Curious Monkey. And we use headphones. So live on stage, every single show, the interviews are played to you through the headphones, which is a technical nightmare.
Fascinating and scary.
And then you speak along with them. So it's like that little game.
And what's this called? What's this type of verbatim called?
It's called recorded delivery.
Recorded delivery.
Some people call it headphone verbatim, but the kind of technical term that Aleki Blythe created was called recorded delivery. And so it's really fun. It's very hair-raising, but it's great. And that really, we would use that technique to try and get the closest to the real person every single time, because what happens as an actor is you might think you're doing a very truthful representation, but over time you might start kind of embellishing or just veering slowly further and further away from the original recordings without even realizing you're doing it. Whereas with the listening to it, you are forced to stay true to the way that people deliver it. And with verbatim, what happens is delivery is very different from what an actor would choose to do. An actor will always over embellish. And actually, when real people talk, and actually, especially when they're talking about something traumatic, they might have recounted that a million times. So people talk very matter of fact about very deep
horrific
emotional things.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the opposite of what you would assume as an actor if you just picked up the script. You'd maybe put way too much onto it.
Actor tip anyway, isn't it? For all of those actors listening.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not just about putting the high drama. Yes, if you've got something really traumatic to portray, think about how humans do that. That's such a gem you've stumbled on there, Rosie. Thank you.
So verbatim technique, it's great if you're doing a verbatim play. However, it's a great technique for so many things. It's good for learning accents, mimicking along with it. So speaking along as somebody's speaking, put it in headphone. Once you get used to the technique, it's actually quite easy, but it's that thing where you're speaking along just like a second after someone, but once you lock in, then it's great. So it's useful for that. It's, as you say, it's useful to actually think about how portraying very realistic speech patterns of human beings as opposed to overdoing it. And also just finding different versions of humanity, because real people end up being more interesting than anything we can create. Yeah.
Sounds wonderful.
It's so fun. I would love to do another one, but they're not really around that much. Although I think they're bringing back London Road at the National. I'm sure they're bringing that back. So that was a musical they created. So they used the cadence of the way the people were speaking and turned it into songs.
That's brilliant. I love that.
You can go on the National Theatre. I've got they made it into a film, and I think Olivia Colman's in it actually. I haven't seen it, but
check that out.
On YouTube, if you just put in London Road National Theatre, it'll there's trailers and stuff, so you can see and hear the songs. It's remarkable, really.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're getting towards the end now, but I'd really like to give some sort of practical everyday habits that people listening could adopt that would help them support their vocal health. So we've learned so much about voice, and obviously there's so much more to learn, but I feel like there's so much there. But if we could all have a little think about vocal health, what are the kind of practical tips that perhaps you give those drama school students that people can work on?
Hydration is key. Little fact that always blows everybody's minds, including mine when I found out about it, is that it takes like between 3 to 4 hours for that sip of water you have to actually hydrate your vocal folds, because we have 2 tubes. We've got the windpipe and we've got the esophagus, and so water doesn't actually go down the windpipe, and that's where your vocal folds live.
It's got to go through your whole body.
It's got to go through your whole body.
So before it hydrates the mind or any, the brain or anything. Yeah. Ooh.
So it goes down the esophagus into your stomach, and then it comes back out through your system, and then it secretes this what we call mucosa then around the vocal folds. So hydration, not just 2 seconds before you do it. Make sure that you are hydrated, especially if you've got, something big that you're doing, whether that's a presentation or an audition or a show. Think about drinking lots of water the night before, lots of water during the day, so that you're you're feeling those vocal folds are nicely hydrated. So that's the big thing. And if you need instant hydration, then steaming, that goes down the windpipe.
I've seen people do this a lot, but it mainly seems to be singers to me. And I'm like,
yes.
Do I need to be doing this? Is this a thing I should be doing? I just thought it looked interesting.
It's just an instant way of hydrating, because then that steam is going down past the vocal folds, because it's going down the windpipe that time, because you're inhaling the steam. So you want to do it not with like boiling water. You don't want to scald yourself. You can literally do it like, maybe in a hot water flask with like a little hole, or you might actually have a little steamer that you pour hot water into, or even just a mug with a tea towel over and just sucking in. But yeah, make sure it's not boiling hot water.
Be careful, people. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
anyone young listening to this, go and get your parents' help for this one.
Yeah, for sure. But, make
careful.
sure you've got adult supervision with that, because you don't want to be inhaling boiling steam. So let it cool down a little bit, but then what you don't want to do is then, which I also didn't know until I did my master's, but then you're not actually meant to then use your voice for a good like 20 minutes or so after, because it's stimulated all the blood has come to the surface and it's hot. And I don't know all the science behind it, to be fair, but I just know you then shouldn't go straight into using your voice. So you have to then let it kind of cool down again.
So timing's so important then for all of this, the pre-hydration, the steaming. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. So the steaming's good for if you're feeling really dry and scratchy and dehydrated and you need a kind of instant hydration. That's great. Now, what musical theatre performers are using now, so that they don't have to wait, is a nebulizer. And
I've seen these.
Yeah, it looks like a little inhaler that you put now it's a saline solution. It's not just water. So it is actually a proper saline and water solution. You buy online little pouch things.
Sachet.
Yeah. And then you like use it like a bit like an inhaler. And that is like room temperature steam, basically. So that then means you don't have to do the hot steam and the waiting for it to cool down and all that kind of stuff. You'll see loads of musical theatre performers sucking on a nebulizer these days, because that's kind of instant room temperature steam.
Before that, I saw blowing into water. Is there merit in that? What does that do?
Yes, so that warms up the vocal folds. So that is
not
actually,
hydration. It's muscle.
That's warming them up. So that's another great tip if you're feeling quite like strained and things are hurting a bit and you want a soft way to warm up. It's got a very complicated name, but it's an acronym, SOVT. It's actually called semi-occluded vocal tract. And it's taken from speech therapy, speech language therapy. So it's been used for donkey's years in therapy, and now Voice World's absolutely cottoned onto it. And so what it does, so that semi-occluded vocal tract means that basically you're closing down that vocal tract, you're closing down the amount of space there is for the air pressure to push through. So it balances out the air pressure, what we call the subglottic pressure, underneath the vocal folds. So it stops you from pushing too much air through, which can put real strain on the vocal folds and make them push apart and bash back together, and you end up, straining them or them, so it's a soft way of starting to warm up the vocal folds. So what you do is you put a straw in some water, and you start blowing through it, and then you make sound through. So you're like, ooh, like that through a straw, and you have to try and control the level of the bubbles. So if you're blowing too hard, if you're using too much air pressure, those bubbles are going to go crazy. If you're not using enough air pressure, it's not going to bubble. So you have to do it bang in the middle where it's just nicely bubbling along. And that is a soft way of getting the vocal folds warming up. Now, we also then, at the start of a warm-up, we don't go straight into big vowel sounds or anything. We use what we call like fricative sounds. So like zzzz, or these little sounds with friction. That's also part of that SOVT work, because we are closing down the amount of space that air can flow through. So it's a nice, soft, gentle way to start warming up the vocal folds. So that's a really, really good tip. So you want to first start with just humming or these little fricative sounds like a V or a Z or a Z sound. And before you then start banging your chest and going into a big open R and things like that. So that's what I'd say. And then the other tip is always to have a good stretch. So there's no point in working on your voice before you stretch out your tension, because then that's when you hurt your voice, because tension creeps all around the body. So you might be tense in one place and it will have a knock-on effect, and it will make its way up to the larynx, because the larynx has got muscles on the outside and the inside. And so that it's just a big collection of all these little tiny delicate muscles. So tension in the neck, tension in the shoulders, and actually tension anywhere else will end up creeping into the voice. So the first thing you want to do, big stretch, a nice yawn, because that's a very soft way to open up the voice. And then you want to have a roll of the neck, a roll of the shoulders, maybe stretch out the ribs, and just have a really nice good stretch before you start making sound. So stretching first and then nice soft sounds. Also letting the breath flow in and out, get the breath flowing. So then that supports the sound.
And this is great for auditions, performances, like say stage, screen.
Yeah.
Just
every day,
going to
though.
a workshop.
Yeah,
looking after your voice.
Totally,
you could do
like
this every day.
A spine roll. If you learn how to do them, just rolling slowly down the spine until you're bent over at the waist, and then rolling yourself back up. So then that works on your alignment. So then your body's in the correct position to make sure it's not impacting your capacity to breathe. It's your larynx is in the correct place. Your neck isn't out of alignment. So a stretch, a spine roll, a good stretch out of the ribs, maybe engaging the abdominal muscles as well. So that's the support, which we haven't talked about, but they really help.
I always bang on about about that.
But they really support the voice. So a few little like psst, psst, shh, shh, shh.
Yeah, so you're like pulsing.
So those muscles are starting to work, and then you can do nice long fricatives until you've got no more breath left, and then you release, let the breath drop in, and go again. So you're working on breath control, and you're starting to bring some soft sound in. So yeah, that kind of stuff. And then resonance, and then don't forget your articulation. And if you've just got a few minutes, it's just a little rub of the jaw, some little lip trills, a few circles of the tongue, and a nice yawn. That'll help you more than...
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant. Before we finish, are you up for a little quick fire round? I've just got 4 quick questions, and then just whatever pops into your head. It could be that we've covered it already and the answer's really obvious, or it could be not come up. I'm still writing them at the moment, but from this episode onwards, I'm going to be asking the guests to write them for the next guests, and I haven't decided yet. But I suppose it's a bit Stephen Bartlett-esque, isn't it? I haven't decided yet if I'm going to let them know who they're going to be, but it's all about performing arts. But anyway, I have written yours for you, so I don't think you'll struggle with these. Okay, so first one thing young actors should know about their voice.
God, no, I can't do quickfire. One thing that young actors
so much
should know about their voice, that you are enough.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is
your
very
voice,
in the spirit of the podcast.
Your voice is beautiful and wonderful as it is, and you want to open it up and celebrate it. Lean into your sounds, lean into your vowels, enjoy your own consonants, and just bask in the beautifulness of it.
Lovely. A common vocal habit that actors can improve.
Devoicing, what I was talking about before. So suddenly getting emotional and then bringing it into this kind of voice where it goes into the soft folds and, oh, I'm so sad. What happens if you say, oh, I'm so sad, like lean in. So that's the habit that I see a lot, is what we call devoicing, which is to take away the voice rather than push through the voice.
One thing people misunderstand about accents.
That they're just a funny thing that you can try on and have a laugh with. They're not. They are part of people's identity, part of people's regional identity, part of people's cultural identity. They are intrinsically tied to human beings' lived experience. So they're not just a funny thing you can put on and take the mick out of.
And finally, one piece of advice for someone preparing for drama school.
Do your prep. Prep and prep and prep some more. Read the play that your monologues are from. Um,
Oh my gosh, that's my bugbear as a drama
yeah,
teacher.
yeah. Know your character inside out and know your lines inside out and back to front, because once you get in there, if you get to the in-person stage, you are going to be asked to maybe switch it up. And even just the high pressure environment, you're in a new room, you're around new people, it's going to throw you off. Like, just know that you probably will be thrown off. And so you want to actually know your lines inside out. So I auditioned for drama school for 2 years, and the first year I was definitely not prepared enough. And so I learned that. So my second year, I practiced those lines inside out, back to front, upside down. But what you don't want to get into is a habit. So you want to try and make sure that you know the line. I used to do it with the radio on while I was driving.
Yeah, I was going to say,
So
do it
that-
whilst you're doing other things. Yeah.
So that those lines are absolutely there, but please don't get yourself into a habit that you cannot unbreak from, because that is what they're looking to see. So when they redirect you, it's got nothing to do with you, or, you know, you might have done the best version of that monologue they've ever heard of, but they want to see how else you work in the room. So yeah, be open, be adaptable, but be prepared.
So don't learn it vocally and physically in one way that you cannot change.
Yeah, because
know
I've
the words,
seen that.
Be open.
Yeah, I've seen that happen, and you know, and someone's been redirected, and they literally, their bodies and their mouths had learnt a way of saying it and an arm action on that line every single time, and they really, it was like watching a robot malfunction. It was really hard to watch because they could not stop their muscle memory, because muscle memory is very, very real. And can help you, but also it can hinder you if you've got into habits. Yeah. You know, at the unexpected, and like, but just preparation is key. Preparation will help you. Yeah.
That's so useful. Is there anything that you wish came up today that hasn't come up?
Maybe, I guess for like young people, is like, there's so many kind of training options out there now. And I think, follow what feels good to you. It's kind of a blessing and a curse that there's so many training options available. It means that, you know, if a 3-year conservatoire drama school is not right for you for whatever reasons, your personal circumstances, or just your personality type, then there are other options out there. However, you might also kind of take a place somewhere for the sake of just being somewhere and training.
That's interesting.
And that I think, and that was one TikTok that actually that really picked up, was me talking about that, the differences between, say, a university course and a drama school course, because they're not all courses are the same, but yet they have now all got the same name. So just don't be seduced by a BA acting in stage and screen. Look and see what the content is, and how much the contact hours, how much are you actually going to be in there, and what modules are you going to have, and how many hours a week are you going to be doing, because, you know, it'll fit some people and then it won't fit others. And I just think, don't rush it. Like, just don't. And now that social media is such a big thing, and you see all these like audition raps and all that kind of stuff, I feel like there must be quite a pressure for young people to just like get in a drama school, so even just so they can post about it on TikTok and be like, I got accepted. And this word rejected comes up again and again. It's like, this
I've done
rejected,
a whole thing on that.
this rejected. And it's like, oh God, like, it's not a rejection, but like, you know, I think just, please don't. I think that's what I would just say to any young people listening, is like, listen to yourself and what you need at this point in your life, and know that it's not a race. It's fine to actually just leave school and just, I mean, obviously the job market's terrible at the minute, so it's not as simple as saying, just go and get a job in a shop. It's really hard to get a job in a shop right now, or in a bar or anything. But you know, there is merit to actually just, going traveling, or getting a regular job, and working in a cafe, and just experiencing life and taking your time, and not finding yourself far away from home on a course that really does not suit you. It's like, I'm, as I say, in my 40s now. When I was at I didn't go to drama school till I was 23. while I was there, I was told, well, you'll really come into your own in your 30s and 40s. And I was like, great, what am I meant to do till then? And you know what? That exactly is what happened. I grew into my casting type. The parts out there that suit me are, well, unfortunately, a lot of like depressed single mothers with issues. That's my stereotypical casting bracket, I'm afraid. I never have a husband and I'm always wearing a cardigan. But
but it's important to know. I do think like, when you know like, what works, it works.
So there isn't a rush, and I don't know, maybe that's saying that from a privileged point of view to tell a young person that there is no rush, but I think there's nothing worse, especially when student loans are involved. You do not want to waste a year of a student loan being upset and far away from home and then ending up dropping out after your first year, going back home, applying for new unis and not having as much funding left and all that. Do you know what I mean? It's just don't be rash with your decision making.
Yes, exactly. That's what you're saying. You're not saying like don't, like you said, it's hard because of getting jobs, etc. But that's what you're saying is really consider that, especially with the sort of whitewashing of courses.
Yeah.
Consider what is right for you and take your time if you need to make sure you're in as right as it can be, because we all live and learn, don't we? But yeah, really just take that decision with all of the information that you can get. Don't just jump into it. Yeah, I think don't
let social media pressure you. You know, don't let keeping up with other people on social media push you into something that actually does not feel right in your gut.
I think that's brilliant. Thank you, Rosie, for being here and giving me all of this time today and all of this wonderful advice and information.
I'll never stop talking, me. So
great. Oh, no, me neither. And it's started to happen with my guests. I said, we'll be about 40 minutes. And then an hour or so later, we're like, we've still got more to say. But I think that is brilliant. And I hope the listeners are sucking it all up and enjoying it and taking, what they need from this.
Good, it's good. It's been really nice.
Thank you. And like I said, I feel like I've learned a bit as well. Before I wrap up, is there anywhere where you would like people to find you or find your work?
I've got a website with lots of just everything very cringy about me on it, which is my just full name, rosiestancliffe.com. And my Instagram page is Geordie Voice Coach. And my name, Rosie Stancliffe. And then, yes, more recently, and this is how we connected, I started up TikTok, which is much less professional than my Instagram page. Although, I made a TikTok recently. I was like, it's not incognito. Like, the tagline is the same as my Insta account. So people will find me, but
they will find you.
Yeah, I'm being a lot more open and honest on there. Kind of just document. It's been a very, very dry time for teaching and acting. So it's become a little bit of a funny little video diary, really, of the ups and downs of being a freelancer in 2026, which is not great, I have to say. But but also there's like some voice stuff, there's accent stuff on there. So it's all, maybe go to my Instagram for the professional version of me.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll link all of that in the show notes and people can decide where, or you can decide where you want to.
Yeah, I don't know whether I need to maybe like make my TikTok more professional, but do you know what I'm really enjoying about TikTok is that it's been getting me through quite like a hard time over the last few months of not as much work around because of the cuts in academia and because the acting world is very, very slow right now. And so it's actually been a nice little outlet to show up more honestly and authentically and kind of laugh my way through that stuff. So yeah, it's not as polished or professional, but maybe to polish it up is to kind of get rid of the reason of why I'm enjoying that honesty, I guess. So,
and it's nice to treat those platforms differently, I think, and have a different side. And I think that I believe that's what they're for, but we'll see. I've made some wonderful connections and seen some really good stuff on there, but some heartbreaking stuff as well, which is why I wanted to talk about drama school, because that's, a lot of that's seen on there as well.
Yes, for sure.
Well, I shall wrap this up then. So thank you again, Rosie. This has been a really, really useful conversation. I think there's so much in there about voice, not just volume and clarity, but confidence, identity, accent, connection, and truthful acting. And if listening you found this helpful, please do share it with a young performer, perhaps a parent or teacher that are thinking about acting training, drama school, auditions, or just looking after their voice. You can find more support resources and coaching through the links in my bio across all of my socials at The Drama Coach. And I'll be back very soon with another episode of The Drama Coach podcast. Thank you so much for listening.